as a young man, what kind of challenges or issues do you see from the perspective of young boys, sexual and reproductive health issue that you are facing amidst the issue of climate change?
Wow, thank you so much for that question. I don't know. I think, once again, I think this is something that might not really be taken seriously. I think this conversation is under discussed, right? First and foremost, as a man, me saying that in itself says so much, because we come from a country that is rich in tradition, cultures, and all these various norms, right?
And highly patriarchal.
Very.
Highly patriarchal in a way that men are seen to have a lot of powers
and dominance,
decision making, which again disadvantages.
Of course, women. Because that can trigger. Also, yes, some of these issues are cross-cutting, right? One thing that happens this side can end up triggering a whole avalanche of impacts on another gender, right? But at the same time, that misconception and norm of men have to be dominant or men hold the power. I don't know. I feel like it triggers risky behavior in men. And this in return can expose us to various sexual reproductive health, or sexually transmitted diseases, STIs, HIV, and all these other things, because you have it in you. In fact, the Waganda call it oxagelata, right? Things like that.
Basically, if I can translate it, that a man has the right to go out there and do what they want and
pretty
come back without any kind of blame.
Yeah, without having a flinch. This is how girls end up being raped. This is how girls end up with unwanted pregnancies because somebody told them something and then they did not. And from a young person's perspective, when I look back, I lacked comprehensive sexuality education as a young boy. Majority of what I got to know, I either learned from a movie or from a conversation with friends. And luckily, I had a father who was active and present in my life, and obviously from my father. However, not everybody is going to be as privileged as I was, right? So this is a very good lesson. If I listen to you carefully, the role of parents, and specifically for that matter, your father really played a very critical role. Yes. But we know that within this era, also mothers can equally play the same. Of course.
So what I'm hearing from you is that as parents, we need to be at the center of guiding our children.
Yes.
In terms of letting them know this knowledge around sexual and reproductive health related, but also based on our culture, that education is a little bit hidden away from us, because these are issues that you don't need to talk about in public. And that again, that creates a bigger challenge.
Even stigma as well, because anybody that talks about sexual reproductive health is usually looked at as somebody that is immoral. Usually these conversations stir emotions that are uncomfortable for majority of the Ugandans, right? And you find that the more we do not have these conversations, misinformation, misconception, this usually ends up constantly being discussed amongst young people, right? In one of the activities that we had in Kalangala, we did an activity that was human-centered design.
That's under
reproductive
health Uganda.
Yes. We have one of our approaches is the Choto approach, where we have different community members be a part of this Choto, and it's a fireside conversation, essentially.
Yeah, if I can clarify, when we talk about Kyoto, you don't mean in climate change we have the Kyoto Protocol, which is a city in Japan, which people relate to climate change. But for this matter, Kyoto is a local kind of name, which means literally that you create a fire camp where you can be able to discuss some of these critical issues. You sit around and be able to open up and, be able to share and discuss these issues.
Yes. So one interesting thing was there was a mother, and she was actually one of the local leaders, and she had a child right next to her, right? So we made sure we have different age groups. Anyways, so she shared something that triggered a response from the mother that we didn't really expect. Anyways, this just goes on to show that there is so much we need to do. And luckily enough, we have various civil society organizations that are trying to fill that gap in information. And of course, I think once again, everything is crowned up by societal norms.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I might be going through something complicated as obviously as a direct result or impact of climate change, but I can't exactly talk about it. For example, I mean, my girlfriend might get pregnant, right?
Yeah.
Imagine somebody in a one Seboduda or Kasese, right? The hospital has been washed away by the landslides. Okay.
Yeah.
I was sexually active. This girl ends up getting pregnant. Okay. I do not know exactly what I'm going to do. We don't really have roads. We do not really have access to food. I generally do not know what my next move is.
And actually, the service, the sexual and reproductive health services are not easily available, not even the nearest hospital, but even when you want to commit, don't have the transport to be able to move where you can be able to get this free, and which is not very common in many in many health centers.
Of course. And if things are a bit that complex here in Kampala, imagine how dire the consequences are outside Kampala, right? I mean, it's easy for us here people don't really understand the gravity of this situation. But so that is going to affect my mental health, the stigma that comes with it, because if I got an infection, I got somebody pregnant, like all these various things, how am I going to talk about it if I worry I'm going to be laughed at? Because what do you mean? You're a man. Like, this is a conversation you shouldn't be having. What do you mean family planning?
In other words, which is very, very interesting. In other words, you die silently because society does not expect you to come out.
They would rather bury you than help you.
Wow. They don't expect you to come out and say, hey, this is happening, I need help. Or you have to fight out your way, but you have to do it silently, which is very, of course, very unfortunate.
Of course. Why should I? Yet there is people that I can talk to